It just made much more sense to start at a more constrained model of software than the hundreds and hundreds that we have there. So I put a business case together and we started talking about it internally. And it's like, okay, let's finally do this. Let's do it. Let's do it at this pace. Let's do it at this size.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to SaaS Me Unfiltered. I am very excited to be joined as a guest co-host today, Ben Pippinger, stepping in for Corey Wheeler. Ben, welcome to SaaS Me Unfiltered.
So excited to be here.
Well, we are even more excited because we are joining you live and in person from FinOps X in San Diego. And we're just such a great sense of community, awesome content this week. We couldn't be more excited to be here. And you know what? As I get to know more and more FinOps professionals, there is one thing that is clear, and they are knocking it out of the park when it comes to cloud management. However, with the incorporation of SaaS in the FinOps framework, they're now being asked to incorporate SaaS into the FinOps picture. And that presents a huge opportunity as well as some new challenges. And those challenges are that SaaS tends to play by a completely different set of rules. If you're a FinOps leader and you're now being asked to manage SaaS, or perhaps you're going to your leadership team and saying, me and my team, we want to take this on, today's episode is for you. We're going to talk about what breaks, what changes, and what actually works when you bring FinOps into this messy world of SaaS. And I am so honored to be welcoming and introducing a seasoned FinOps leader, TJ Johnson, the lead architect for platform economics at MGM Resorts International. TJ, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Okay, TJ, you were brought in at MGM to run FinOps, and you've built it into this mature, well-oiled machine, and that is not easy, specifically in a large enterprise. Now you've been handed the keys to build a software management program from the ground up. Given MGM's size and the industry's strict regulations, I can only imagine how complex this is. As you jumped into this initiative, what was your first, what have I gotten myself into moment?
So we've actually attempted to do this in the past, actually 3 or 4 times. Unfortunately, we were not being very successful with it because I think we just had people coming in and out, and it just wasn't the consistency that we really needed. The other side of that is we realized we did a whole bunch of reviews, some POCs of software late last year, and you recognize that we don't even have the people that can do the practice internally. You know, yes, we do have some software management people. We do have an ITAM program, but it's not where it needs to be to run a full-blown program. And so we started to look at what were the options for us, right? We looked at some of the larger SAM vendors, and it just still didn't make sense to spend as much as we would with them to only use a very small percentage of the software, because that's the only value that we could use. So we really looked at a couple of different options. Obviously, Zylo was one of the options. And it just made much more sense to start at a more constrained model of software than the hundreds and hundreds that we have that are the larger commercial SAM models. So I put a business case together and we started talking about it internally. And it's like, okay, let's finally do this. Let's do it. Let's do it at this pace. Let's do it at this size. And let's grow the practice. And then maybe at some point in the future, we'll go to a full-blown SAM, right? But the real start of it was to say, okay, we think there's waste somewhere in there. We're not identifying it because we don't even know what we have. So first thing we want to do is one of the goals that we had was, what do we have?
Yeah.
Right? Let's figure that out first. And let's figure out the users. Let's figure out what the contracts say. Let's figure out all that stuff. But let's start here. You know, it doesn't have to be optimization day one. It's really knowing what you have day one that really sets that tone for where you want to move forward.
Hey, one question that you said at the start of that you've tried this a couple times and haven't been successful with it. I haven't heard you talk about that yet. I think it's really interesting because a lot of people, when they start doing SaaS management, they think, oh, we come in, we solve a problem, and then we're out. But
that's not how it works.
Yeah. So what happened when you guys did that at MGM? Was it just the program fell apart, or things changed and lost control, or what?
So I think the challenge, as with most organizations, is where is that golden source? Who retains the data of what software do you have that you want to manage? And you see some of it in the CMDB, you see some of it in ServiceNow, you see some of it in different places. And actually, like most organizations, it can be in different places.
Yeah.
And then you have to find somebody that's going to consolidate all that, right? Because no one person typically will have that picture unless you have a tool. And so that's where we started to understand that we don't know what we don't know. Let's first try to figure out what we can figure out, and then we'll grow it from there.
And MGM said, hey, we've tried this before. We need that source of truth for all software. We know it lives in lots of different places, but we got to pull that together in order to get this program off the ground and started to see some of the outcomes that you're going to hopefully see.
Yeah, and if we just looked at all the software, that would be too overwhelming for us because we didn't have necessarily the resources to manage that large scale of project. So we wanted to start with a smaller project that was definitely attainable.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I think with software, there's so many titles out there, so many vendors. Getting down to a manageable list where you can start from, well, hopefully where you can see some impact. That's a great way to get going. I mean, what are the initial levers you're looking to pull from an optimization perspective? Or do you have those in your mind yet? Are you that far along to know for that smaller list of apps, these are the tactics we're going to be taking? Or
so we looked at the data.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of a data freak with all this stuff. So the more data I have, the better I feel.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so we had one application that was $5 million a year. We had 14 users. Oof. Wow. So, but digging into it, we understand why we only have 14 users, because it is a highly effective risk management tool.
Okay.
And we need something like that. Every company should have a strong risk management tool. And they're expensive. That's just the reality of it. So we said, okay, well, is this an opportunity for optimization? Actually, no, because it fits exactly what we need.
Yeah.
Right. And so you really have to be able to look at the software, the users, the business case, understanding why this seems so lopsided, but it does make sense in the end, right? Because you're paying for the value that the application brings, not only just the users that use the application.
Yeah.
So the things like that we started to discover as we were going through and understanding what the data was really telling us.
Yeah.
And some other ones, we had like 10,000 users and we had 2 actually, put out to individual users. So for us, it was really trying to make sense of what the data was telling us that allowed us to then make just better decisions.
So that's sort of how you're doing some prioritization. You're looking at what's the spend look like and then probably balancing value against usage and understanding where there's an opportunity for you to go after potentially some cost savings.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And there's opportunity everywhere. So when you first dive into this, you discover there's a lot of opportunity out there.
Yep.
And then you have to take a step back and say, okay, how do I want to prioritize this? What is this going to look like? How do we want to approach this?
Yeah. Yeah. Because there's, everything from waste to redundant applications to shadow IT to who knows what else is out there. Yeah. And you have to do that initial work to understand what you have and then build your program and plan around that.
Yeah. When we first started to circulate what we're going to do, it was surprising to see how many people were like, oh, yes, we need this right now.
Interesting.
And so, because it wasn't just about what you were just saying a second ago. It wasn't just about the inventory of knowing what it was. It was more of how can we do app rationalization, right? We don't need 42 project management software, right? We just don't need it.
That's funny.
Right? And so when we go through the process, you start to recognize how many redundant things we have. And since that was like early this year, we actually implemented a new software intake process that allowed us to then double check if we don't already have a solution in place, that yes, you can then move forward with the solution. But if you already have a solution in place, then you have to see if you can conform to that solution that's already existing.
Yep.
Right? Why do we need to add more and more and more? Right?
Yeah.
And so it made us rethink how we wanted to approach software in general, specifically procurement for us.
Yeah. One more question on that. Is that intake process, is that a procurement responsibility or does that sit within your world, within the FinOps?
It's in the technology space.
Okay.
Yeah. We also co-redesigned the financial request for that too.
Yep.
So you have to go through the technology intake first, then you go through the financial request, and then when both of those are done and everybody's satisfied, then we move toward procurement.
Okay.
So it's just a really interesting process that made us reevaluate kind of how we want to. And we think it's a better process for us. It allows us to not have the redundant software. It allows us to really manage what we have better. We're looking at user license counts now better. Are we going through the process of really estimating how many users that we're going to be using? And how is it licensed?
How has this new process been received internally?
I think there's some hesitancy because it does delay the process a little bit more, but it gives us the opportunity to really look and see how well that software fits into our organization. And I think it's going to get faster and faster because we're going to be used to it. And now these, 17 questions as part of the intake process are going to go faster and faster. We're just going to get better at it. Yeah. So I think eventually it'll get better. But, any new process that you redesign is going to be a little slow and a little tough for people to, I have to do what now?
Yes.
So, yeah.
When you launched this new process, was there buy-in from internally from employees that they knew kind of the goal and why the company was doing it? How did you share that story? So maybe, I guess there was a little bit more welcomeness to a new 17-step process.
Right. So we actually had an announcement at one of our town halls and we talked about the new process. We walked everybody through the new process. There was a lot of education in advance of the process being truly implemented fully. And so there were some beta customers that we went through. But I think explaining it to them and why we were doing it and the value that we're going to get from it as an organization, I think it switched things for them. I think they understand now better security, better everything that we have in place, easier to actually provision, SSO, we've got everything right. So everything's set up correctly. And that's what we wanted to get to. And through that evaluation, it helped us get better at what we're doing today.
I love that approach of a town hall. It's not something we've heard a lot of people talk about before, but I can see why that would make so much sense in that environment. It sounds like you had a really good result.
Fantastic result.
With it. Well, so we talked a little bit at the start of the episode. We're at FinOps X. TJ, you're going to be a keynote speaker. You're going to be talking about a term called focus, and that is the FinOps open cost and usage specification. A lot of our listeners probably have no idea what that is, but it is really important to FinOps professionals. Can you walk us through in simple and clear terms, what does that really mean?
Sure. So, one of the problems that we had in FinOps was consistent data from the cloud providers. There was no consistent billing formats. So we all had devised our own mapping of how we wanted to consolidate all of the data that we got from each of the vendors through API that we typically put into a database. What Focus allowed us to do was build a standard. And that was really important to us because when all the clouds adopted the standard last year, it really changed how we looked at gathering the data and then building reports or measurements off of the data. And so that allowed us to then, once we standardized, we can look at how we can then expand that even more. I mean, there's new versions coming out of Focus. They continue to enhance it more and more. And I think that's an important part of what we as practitioners look for is we like consistency. We like standards. We like, repeatable processes. That makes it easier for us to manage things, right? So if you're in that crawl, walk phase, you're probably going to be good with Focus, but you're going to evolve into needing something more than just public cloud. It could be private cloud. It could be SaaS. It could be telecom expense management. It could even be AI if you wanted. So any of those scopes, that's a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about, the scopes and how they all play together. And so that's part of what we look for within the practices. How do we get better at what we're doing? And so there's a new term called technology optimization that's coming about, right? And so that's the new level of practice. And what that means to us in the FinOps community is it allows us to extend our influence to other parts of the organization. And so we also extend these best practices. The FinOps Foundation has done a great job of creating domains capabilities that allow us to then grow from that. But those are very similar across all of the scopes. They're just different languages and how different approaches. But some people like to think of it as 4 different practices, but it's really kind of just one extended practice because the capabilities are pretty much the same. And as I was saying earlier, the practice is looking at reducing usage and reducing unit price or unit cost, right? And so it's the same thing for SaaS, right? It just depends on what the usage is or the type of usage it is, and then you still want to reduce unit cost. So we have a lot of similarities across all of the scopes, specifically the public cloud and then SaaS.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. There's a ton of similarities, especially with those outcomes being very similar to what you're trying to get to and what you're trying to accomplish. What do you see as the key differences? Like, what do you think are the things that are maybe capabilities can still apply, but you're going to have to tackle these things a little bit differently with SaaS than you do with cloud?
Yeah. So I think one of the big things is that there's sometimes some confusion because Zylo software is so flexible, right? And so you can store contract information, you can have the metadata for contracts in there, or you can store the actual copy of the contract. So there's some confusion sometimes when I talk to people, I say, okay, is this a contract lifecycle management tool or is this a SaaS management tool? So yes, you can do that in there if you want to, but that's not the purpose of it. The purpose of it is to really manage your software.
Yep.
And so having that clarity and that difference, really, you start explaining the differences of what you want to do with it. I think people start to understand that this is a function that's specific to software management. And this is where you want to keep the boundaries. Like for us, we're not going to put any contracts in there, although we could, because we do have a CLM, right? But we're going to integrate into the CLM. So we don't have to have this redundant information. So I don't want to look at data to have data. I want to look at stuff that's really good data. That's going to be what I need it for.
For your FinOps practice and your FinOps tool to manage cloud, are you getting contract data in there, or is that coming through the billing endpoints?
No, that's a whole separate thing.
Yes. So the reason I asked the question is the reason we have contracts in Zylo is the data you can't readily get that data from a SaaS vendor's APIs, right? That's where it's a little bit different, right? The data ingestion process between cloud and SaaS is different. So we have to go about getting the spend data and getting the contract data and getting usage data and all this stuff in order to build this picture for you. So you can put the practice in place to get to those lower unit economics and cost savings.
And that is invaluable. The
Yeah.
fact that you have that flexibility to do that, that's invaluable.
Yep. Totally.
TJ, you want to step back to focus for a minute. You're talking about, the ability to get the consistent data, the ability to build reliable, scalable processes across teams. But SaaS is so complicated. It's complex, it's fragmented. There's license complexity and vendor models all over the place. How are you thinking that FinOps needs to evolve in the world of SaaS, or maybe the framework or focus? Like, how are these worlds coming together?
So I don't want to say that we're forcing it to come together, but there are some logical things that do make sense. And so for us, when we bring it together, we want to look at the capabilities. That's where I started the process. Instead of having workload optimization, we have user license optimization, right? Instead of cloud practice, we have just a SaaS practice, right? Or SAM practice. And so we're changing that up a little bit. We're changing the definition slightly, but overall those capabilities are the same. So I wouldn't necessarily say that it's so strange for that transition. I would say that it's going to take a slight shift, but it's not like this huge thing. At least I don't see it that way.
I think you earlier, when we were chatting before this, you said what your end-to-end goal is.
Yeah.
And I think you need all these things come together to get to that end goal. So I think that's maybe talk about that just for a minute, like what you're really trying to get to at the end of the day.
So we are looking at, I think, the term technology optimization and looking at doing that across all technologies. And so what we want to get to a point is we want to get to where we have technology costs at the VP level across all of these different scopes. So we can go in and say, Mr. and Mrs. VP, here is your stuff. Is this your budget? Should you be looking at budgeting this way, right? And so are you aware that you're responsible for, $20 million in spend for the organization and your budget's only $5 million, right? So there's some accountability things that come into play, but we really want to get that awareness so that we can get the accountability, so we can get better information and we can manage all our technology better.
Yep. So you need this like cohesive approach across all these different groups, driving unit economics, driving cost savings, looking at all that great stuff that you need to look at in order to deliver that to the VP.
Business.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. Well, this has been an awesome conversation. I think it's funny. There's just a lot of parallels between a lot of other enterprises like you that are solving similar problems. You're at FinOps X, you're going to be talking about the new scopes. You're going to have practitioners that are going to come up to you and be like, TJ, how have you solved this? What's going on? What are you doing?
Already have that.
Yeah. And so, what do you say? Like, we're obviously going to be a little bit skewed towards SaaS. So if they're thinking about SaaS, like, what are you going to tell them? Like, hey, when you go back to your desk next week, here's step one. Here's how you get going.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
So first I would start with, you're not alone. You don't have to do this all yourself. One of the things you have to do is look at building what I call an extended team model or virtual team model. You may not be able to get the head count for additional people. So leverage other people in the organization that have similar responsibilities to what you're looking to do, right? Guaranteed there's somebody who owns, ITAM, somebody in the organization. See what that team is like and see if they have interest in working with this solution. Maybe they even put some of their budget toward it,
Yeah.
So don't think that you have to do this all alone. The other thing that you were mentioning earlier was this amazing community that we have for the FinOps Foundation. And I guarantee you, probably half the people are doing what you're looking to do. And so leverage the community to help you understand how to do this. I'm one person. You would have another 5,000 people out there that are probably in the same boat that you're in. Leverage that skill set, leverage those people. I haven't met anybody that's not willing to help another community member. So that's one of the values that we have within our community is that we are open to helping.
Yeah, I love that. Just, I think us being fairly new to the community, I think I felt that last year when I was here at the event, and I'm excited now that we're, hoping to make have a bigger role going forward to be a bigger part of that community. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, TJ, thank you so much for, we're getting ready to start FinOps X tonight. I know you've had a lot of responsibilities with the event and you took the time out to join our listeners today. You've walked us through what it takes to really apply that FinOps mindset to SaaS. And I love that you said you're not alone. You don't also have to have it figured out in day one of doing this, and ask the right questions, stay focused on the outcomes, and maybe be willing to rethink what's worked in the past and will it work moving forward or maybe not. But I'm so grateful for you taking the time to join us today. It's been really an honor to have you here.
Yes, thank you.
And we can't wait to see you on the main stage tomorrow.
I appreciate that. Thank you.